was a perfect night for a ride, or so I had convinced myself. The forest road was narrow and twisted, its branches stretching out like skeletal fingers above me, blocking out the little light the stars provided. My tires hummed against the cracked asphalt as I pedaled faster, eager to clear the dense woodland before the cold truly set in. I didn't like this road. No one did. Most people avoided it, especially at night. But I was stubborn, or maybe just reckless. The faster route home wasn't an option tonight, thanks to some accident blocking the main road. So here I was, alone with the sound of my breath, the crunch of leaves beneath my bike, and the occasional rustle of something unseen darting through the underbrush. Then I heard it. A low rumble, almost imperceptible at first, blending into the wind and the creaking of the old trees. It could have been anything, an animal maybe? But no, it grew louder, the rhythm more distinct. It was mechanical. The kind of sound that claws its way up your spine, sending chills dancing across your skin before your brain has even caught up. I slowed, squinting into the dark behind me. The road stretched back, swallowed by shadows, yet something was there. A faint glow. Flickering. No, not flickering, blinking. A pair of headlights, flashing on and off in irregular patterns, too distant to make out the vehicle, but close enough to stir a cold knot of dread in my gut. I stopped pedaling for a moment, thinking it might pass me by. But it didn't. The headlights disappeared for a second, plunging the road into a deeper darkness, only to reappear closer. Much closer. That's when I heard the engine, heavy, guttural. A tractor. Who in their right mind would be driving a tractor out here in the dead of night? I turned back toward the road, my heart pounding now, legs straining as I pushed my bike harder. But no matter how fast I pedaled, the rumble behind me kept closing in. The headlights flickered again as if teasing me. And then they cut out completely. I didn't dare look back. My legs were burning, my breath ragged, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Something that wanted me to turn around. The engine roared to life again, this time louder, angrier, and I swear I heard tires screech against the gravel, as if it was gaining speed. There was a break in the trees up ahead, a clearing maybe? I leaned into the pedals, pushing with every ounce of strength I had left. The rumble was deafening now, the headlights slicing through the dark, casting eerie shadows around me. It felt like the tractor was right on my heels, but I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. Movement. It wasn't the tractor. It was too small, too fast. An animal? No, a person darting between the trees. For a brief second, I wondered if they had heard the tractor too, if they were trying to escape it like I was. But the tractor didn't care about them. No, it only cared about me. I could feel its presence looming behind me, the air thick with the scent of exhaust and something far more sinister. The headlights blinked again, illuminating the road ahead, and for the first time, I caught a glimpse of the hulking metal beast. Its front grille was rusted and jagged like the teeth of some ancient predator, and the driver's seat was empty. It wasn't possible. There was no one driving the damn thing, yet it moved with purpose. Every swerve, every lurch toward me was deliberate. Wanted me. Wanted to crush me beneath its wheels. I pushed harder, but my legs were jelly. My breath came in short, panicked bursts, and no matter how fast I went, the tractor seemed to close the distance with ease. The roar of the engine was deafening now, drowning out everything but the wild thumping of my heart. And then the headlights shut off again, plunging me into a suffocating darkness. But I knew it was still there. My legs screamed for mercy as I pushed the pedals harder, but it was no use, the tractor was too close. I could feel the rumble of its engine vibrating through the air, rattling my bones, taunting me. I didn't dare look back, but I knew somehow that the thing was bearing down on me, its hulking frame ready to flatten me into the road. The darkness clung to the edges of my vision, the only light those cursed headlights, flickering on and off like the heartbeat of something alive. And then, with a deafening roar, the engine surged again, its monstrous growl louder than ever. Panic seized my throat and instinct kicked in. I threw myself off the bike, launching into the underbrush. I landed hard, my hands scraping against the rough bark of a tree as I tumbled into the damp earth. For a moment, everything was a blur, twigs snapping underfoot, my breath coming in ragged gasps, heart pounding against my chest so violently I thought it might burst through my ribs. I crawled deeper into the woods, my limbs trembling, ears straining for the sound of the tractor. But it had stopped. No engine, no rumble, just silence. The sudden absence of sound was almost worse. It felt as though the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. I stayed low, crouching behind a thick tree trunk, the sharp scent of pine filling my nostrils. My eyes darted around the pitch-black woods, every rustle of leaves sending spikes of fear through me. But there was nothing. No movement. No headlights sweeping the forest floor. Just stillness. Had it gone? I hadn't heard it drive off. My curiosity gnawed at me like a hunger. I needed to know. I had to see if the tractor had passed, or if it was still there lurking, waiting for me to emerge from the trees. Slowly, cautiously, I crawled back toward the road. The forest pressed in on all sides, the branches tangled above me like twisted fingers, but the silence remained. As I crept closer, I spotted my bike. It lay crumpled on its side in the middle of the road, its front wheel spinning lazily in the still air. The tractor was nowhere in sight. My pulse quickened. Had it really just disappeared? I was about to move closer when I saw something that stopped me cold. A figure. A man, or something shaped like a man, stood next to my bike, his movements slow, deliberate. His silhouette was dark, blending into the shadows of the forest, but I could see him clearly. He was hunched over, his hands brushing the seat of my bike, his head tilting as if he was inspecting it. There was something off about the way he moved. His limbs too fluid, too quiet, as though he wasn't bound by the same laws of motion as the rest of us. I froze, barely daring to breathe. Who was he? Was he the driver of the tractor? No, that didn't make sense. There had been no one in the cab. I'd seen it with my own eyes. But the way this figure moved with such purpose made my skin crawl. He wasn't just inspecting the bike, he was searching for something. For me. My heart hammered in my chest as I shrank back into the shadows of the trees. The man circled the bike, his head snapping up occasionally as if listening for a sound. I pressed my back against the nearest tree trunk, biting down hard on my lip to keep from gasping. He stopped suddenly, his head turning toward the woods, toward me. I swallowed a scream, covering my mouth with my hand as I stared, wide-eyed, at the figure. His face was still hidden in shadow, but I could feel his eyes boring into the darkness, searching. The way he stood there, so unnervingly still, sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if he could sense me hiding in the trees mere feet away. I had to move. I couldn't stay here. If he found me, I didn't even want to think about what would happen. The man stepped closer to the edge of the woods, his boots crunching softly against the gravel. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't come any closer, that he wouldn't see the faint outline of my body crouched behind the tree. He stopped again, his head tilting slightly as if sniffing the air. I inched back, careful to avoid snapping any twigs. My muscles burned from the tension, and my vision was beginning to blur from the strain of holding my breath. I needed to run. But if I made a sound, if I misstepped, he'd hear me. Suddenly, without warning, the man let out a low, guttural hiss. It wasn't human, not quite. It was more like the sound of steam escaping from some ancient, rusted machine. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't wait any longer. In one swift, silent motion, I turned and bolted deeper into the woods, the branches slapping at my face as I ran. I didn't care anymore about making noise. I didn't care if he heard me. I just had to get away. My heart thundered in my ears as I sprinted through the underbrush, my legs pumping faster than they ever had before. I risked a glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see the man lunging after me, but he wasn't there. The road had disappeared behind me, swallowed by the darkness of the forest. All I could hear now was the sound of my own footsteps, crashing through the leaves, and the faint echo of that horrible hiss. I kept running, not stopping until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they might give out. Only then did I allow myself to slow down, collapsing against a tree to catch my breath. My whole body was shaking, and every instinct screamed at me to keep going, to run all the way home and never look back. But a terrible curiosity gnawed at me even as I stood there, panting in the dark. I wanted to know what that man had been looking for. I wanted to know why he hadn't followed me, why he had just stood there, watching the woods like a predator waiting for its prey to make the first move. It was stupid, insane even, but I had to know. Against every instinct screaming in my head, I turned back, retracing my steps toward the road. The silence pressed in around me as I approached the edge of the forest again. My breath came in shallow bursts, my pulse thudding in my ears. The man, was he still there? I peeked through the trees, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. The bike was still lying on its side in the road. But the man, he was gone. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I scanned the area looking for any sign of him, and then, there. A shadow, flickering just beyond the edge of the road, disappearing into the darkness. He hadn't gone far. Without wasting another second, I turned and bolted back into the woods, my feet pounding against the ground as I raced for home. I didn't look back this time. I couldn't. I just ran, the image of that shadowy figure seared into my mind. By the time I reached my front door, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. When I finally managed to twist it open, I stumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind me and throwing the deadbolt. The night outside was silent once more, but I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there in the dark, the man was still looking for me.